Los Angeles, creating all these spot zoning situations where we have these overly built situations in neighborhoods that can't handle the infrastructure, or overtaking the character of a neighborhood forced on us by the state. Where do you stand on the density bonus in regards to how many we actually get of affordable housing out of a, say, a 50-unit complex, we get 5 units, and in the rest of the neighborhoods then have to live with this ginormous outzoned project?
There's a legislative analyst office. This is the technocrats in Sacramento that study issues for the legislature. So the legislative analyst office did a study a few years ago that showed that California is in a big housing shortage right now. And that spurred a lot of action in Sacramento to pass a number of laws. We had one passed just this year that's going to make secondary dwelling units a lot easier to build. One of the reasons why at the time I was able to win the LA Times endorsement is because for about 2.5 hours, about an hour and a half of that was getting asked land use questions like this. So I can just tell you my perspective, where I come from on this issue. I've analyzed the value of the building my bike shop used to be in, and I've analyzed the value of some of the big box commercial that we build in this city. And if you analyze those buildings on the value of the building by square foot, the city loses money on the big box and the new and the code compliant. And on the old and the dilapidated and the historic, we make money hand over fist as a city on a dollar per square foot basis. And that's how the city's expenses scale. Sidewalks by square feet, roads by square feet, pipe by linear feet. It's time for us to take a closer look at where this city is making its money and to focus our development on fortifying that base. And it is not from the gigantic and the overbuilt. If you take a look at our historic areas, they have a solid property tax base that does not fluctuate when the real estate market tanks and the real estate market takes off. They maintain their value. There's a reason why I'm a member of about, I think, every single historic society in the LA Conservancy, because I've found that good urban planning also is historic preservation, that you lock in value in our neighborhoods. So what I'd like to see is, and I'll just give you a personal example from the last 2 weeks. I've been walking a lot in Pico Union, and last week I spent a lot of time in the area bounded by Union and Hoover, Pico up to 12th Street, or 11th Street. And in that little area, I think I saw 8 multifamily, large, I think they were historic homes that were burned out, vacant, and boarded up. It's like 8 of them, and they're substantial. And I had to stop at them because there were maybe like 12 voters at this one 16-unit, 3-building complex that weren't there anymore. And that's the story of the first council district, is that we actually have hundreds of thousands of square feet of vacant buildings and vacant lots that are unbuildable because we have city code that is built for big box retail and multifamily housing, where only the biggest money and the biggest dollars can assemble these massive super block projects with big subterranean parking structures. Look at Sunset Boulevard in the first council district. There's those small, cute little brick buildings. There's the building where Shepard Fairey has his studio. Those are the buildings that we love. Those are the buildings where the city makes money on property taxes. Those are the buildings that lock in value, not just for that building, but all the surrounding property, because they're delightful, they're beautiful, they're well designed, and they retain the character and the history of this neighborhood, and they reflect on it as we grow as a metropolis. Building that is what I'm all about. And whether it's through variances or conditional use permits or rezoning an area or working with the neighborhood on community plans, that's what I support. Incremental, neighborhood-scale growth. I do not like to see big blank walls of apartments. And yeah, we've got housing now, but that's all we've got. And the buildings depreciate, the buildings fall into ruin, and they never cover the cost of what they do to the neighborhood. I think we need to flip that equation and start building things that return the value to the public sector that all of our historic and older neighborhoods do now. I think that should be our focus. And once we're focusing on that, we'll find a lot more that meshes up, not with the big development companies, but the mom and pop property owners, the people that want to add a secondary dwelling unit or turn their big house into a fourplex, or people that want to do a little 1 or 2-story mixed user and need a little flexibility and help. I'm going to spend my council office's time not with the big and the mega, but with the small and the micro, to help people permit and zone and get code compliant their little secondary dwelling units that are being wiped off the map with systematic code enforcement right now. There's going to be a lot of focus in my office on code enforcement, not just to build new buildings and to rezone the old secondary dwelling units, but also in our big multifamily. I was in Pico Union last week, again, on the corner, I think it was 11th, and I can't remember the name, maybe Bonnie Bray. It's a big, beautiful old building. It's like 6 stories tall. The entire building was without water. The entire building. It's probably like 400 people. and they've been out without water for 2 days. Where is code enforcement in the 1st District? When you're in Mount Washington, there are people building homes right now that have planning approvals that are illegal with haul routes that should never have been approved. And the builders are not even holding themselves to the illegal haul routes. They're doing something that is worse than the haul route. They're blocking narrow, 10-foot wide roads, people having to back up a mountain. There's a real public safety risk. Where is code enforcement in Mount Washington? I think that's where my focus would be on land use. For me, it's not so much about our neighborhoods being destroyed by development. It's that our neighborhood needs a rational look at what development can do for us. And if it doesn't work out, we need to walk away from it. We need to say to those folks, you're not giving us back the return that we deserve. Look at what we love, give us that. And if you can't give us that, we'll make it harder for you. We won't make it harder for you, but you're not going to get any help. You're not going to have anybody working with the community for you. There's a project that was approved on Sunset at the old the hardware, the Do It Center, that went through a full EIR, and I think it's just basically it's happening. And I know there are a lot of people in the neighborhood that are very frustrated with that process. And I think that's a great example of where you'd find more agreement in my office. That if people are looking for variances and height variances and FAR variances and all kinds of conditional uses, that there would be much more for this neighborhood to work with in my council office than we're getting now, which I think has just been a hands-off approach. And you can see with all the developer, I mean, there's this, again, from this Feel the Burn thing, my top 3 donor occupations, the top one is retired. That's what I've made all my donors from, has been the retired people. The top donor occupation for my opponent is real estate developers. Just to give you a perspective of where I'm coming from. The people that have a vested interest.
You'll wind up retired.
The second one is attorneys, so maybe that's, and the third is the film industry for me. So I think that's my perspective. I try not to get too nitty-gritty on that answer, but believe me, I can go on at length, and I don't want to make anyone fall asleep. So
Let's see if there's any other.
yeah.